Hi, folks. Welcome to Crisco's Corner. Unfiltered commentary. And that's your truth, the real truth. Please like, share, and subscribe. And as always, thank you for your support. Welcome back. I think this is time for a little discussion on where the American people stand at this point. I think, there's an old expression in the South. I live in upstate New York. And this isn't derogatory to the people we're talking about here. It's just trying to make a point. Don't kick a fresh turd on a hot day. You those can figure that out. And I think this is what happens when you push everyday people, just average Americans, to a point where they're so pissed off that they're not going back. And I don't think it was just COVID and the illegal lockdowns and everything else. The lockdowns probably, I've seen some scientific papers from people a lot smarter than myself that thinks it killed more people than it saved. And now we're going back to draconian measures, depending on what state we live in. I live in upstate New York, so I'm in a deep blue state, so lucky me. But let's talk about what's going on right now. I think they've awakened a sleeping giant. You remember the quote from Yamamoto, the admiral, when they bombed Pearl Harbor. He went to the University of Chicago. He knew Americans very well. And what's happened right now, at least in schools, you're seeing here, there's some angry parents. There's some angry mothers. There's some pissed off mothers. And I'll tell you what, like any other mother in the animal kingdom, you threaten one of their children with this CRT crap and making them feel badly because they're white or because they're any color. Once you piss them off, look out. I think somebody said the French Revolution basically escalated because of women. I'm telling you, look at them, and they are not happy. And there's millions of them everywhere. If you remember, that's supposedly, if you go by the numbers that they gave you in the 2020 election, it was the white suburban women that turned the tide for Joe Biden. Talk about buyer's remorse. And this is the end of July, mid-August is when the kids start going back to school. And, oh, man, is the crap going to hit the fan. There are some pissed off parents. Look at this group. If you look at the heads here, looks like about 90% plus women. You went after their children. You went after their children with indoctrination in a ideology that's evil. You made people feel inferior. You tried to manipulate one of their children. Guess what, dudes? They're pissed. The tide is turning. It's very much like turning an aircraft carrier. It takes a long time to turn, but once it turns, it is powerful. You're having people going out and protesting. They wouldn't protest the government. Not normally. But you push them. Even a field mouse will fight back if you corner it. And the people have had enough. Rights come from natural law, not government. That's the one thing these progressives don't get. Rights do come from God, not the government. The states made the federal government. The federal government did not make the states. And there's secession talk going around. Civil War talk going around. They're pushing back. People are pushing back. And you can see here, there's a lot of young people in there. Yeah, a higher percent of young people are brainwashed, to be sure. But not all of them. And that's the other thing the Democrats and progressives fear. The smart Democrats, I should say, is the fact that the con that they put on non-white people, they're starting to realize it's a 3-card Monte deal. You've been screwing us for years, and we're finally waking up, especially black males, Hispanics especially. Now, Hispanics are not a homogenous group. They're very, very diverse. But even all those different groups are starting to say, enough is enough, and they're pushing back. Anti-abortion groups. This is the modern day equivalent of, we'll say, slavery in the 19th century, in the 1860s when the war started in the U.S. in the Civil War. Abortion is the modern slavery issue. There is no middle ground. I'm sorry, there isn't. And I did for years think, pretty much like what Bill Clinton said. How does that go? Rare, safe, rare, that kind of thing. And that was the compromise. But how could you compromise? Could you compromise on slavery? That some of it's okay, but some of it isn't? There is no middle ground. This is an issue that has none. And I shouldn't say anti-abortion people. Whoever wrote this obviously was a leftist. I got this off the internet. How about pro-life? They're not looking out for the minorities with this issue, the Democrats. My understanding is on a yearly basis, there are more non-white babies aborted than there are born. That's the fact. And this is something that's starting to seep in to the everyday people. They destroyed the nuclear family with welfare and other social programs, and now they're going after the children. They're not to be born at all. It's a very twisted version of eugenics. And if you remember, Margaret Sanger, who founded Planned Parenthood, was a big eugenicist. Americans are on the move. Look at these are all Cuban. See the Cuban flags. Cuba is one of the few countries under U.S. law that if you can make it to American soil, legally or not, once you arrive here, you're given sanctuary because of the regime in Cuba. I'm 64. It basically has been there as long as I've been alive. And here they are, American Cubans. And these people know either them themselves have escaped the socialist Cuba or their parents, and in some cases, their grandparents. Interesting how that works. Why are people, either first generation or from other countries, know about American freedom and liberty more than the average American? Now we come to a particular point I think is going to start ignite a movement, a sleeping giant, if you will. Second Amendment rights. Second Amendment rights are huge, absolutely huge. What is local law enforcement? As you see here now, local law enforcement, state and local level, is supporting the Second Amendment. But they're going to do it in the blue states? I live in upstate New York, which is not exactly what I call blue territory, even though we're in a deep blue state. It's mostly red. What happens when people start getting their guns confiscated? Is the local sheriff's department and the local law enforcement, a city or county, going to step in? So sure as hell won't be the state, because that's run by deep blue thinking governor. What's going to happen? Is the National Guard going to show up and say no? Are these sheriffs and police officers in these cities going to say no? We're going to find out real quick. And that's the last thing you want to do is piss off the gun owners. Not because it's dangerous, because they'll shoot you. That's not what I meant. These people are dug in. These people are pissed. They are dug in to the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. I wish the founders could have wrote more, but they probably figured that small line is simple enough. It's idiot proof, right? Well, apparently not. How is it possible that you can get a gun permit? You can go to Tennessee now, as long as you've passed a federal background check for criminality and mental illness. You can buy a gun, carry whatever you want to. No license, no permit. Open carry, concealed carry, anything you want. And then you go to Los Angeles or New York City, and it's impossible to get one. New Jersey, you get the idea. The Constitution isn't a two-tiered system. It either applies for everyone or no one. And the progressive Democrats right now want it to apply to no one. And these people aren't having it. The Second Amendment is not negotiable. He's absolutely right. It's like the abortion issue. There is no middle ground. You have the right to keep and bear arms should not be infringed. Period. And now we're starting to see crowds. As you can see here, these are Cuban Americans again. They're starting to come out of the woodwork. People that would never normally march and protest are coming out now. They saw all last year with the violent protest with the Black Lives Matter and Antifa and all kinds of other craziness and billions of dollars in damage. Dozens and dozens, if not hundreds of people killed. Lives ruined for sure. Tens of thousands of lives ruined. Hundreds of thousands forever. And here they are. Here they are. Even the young people. People are starting to come around. The brainwashing from the schools is starting. It's out in the open now. It's out in the open, and they can't unopen. It's like unseeing something. Once you see something, you can't unsee it. And they've been exposed. We've always known, but they've pushed the envelope so much, they end up screwing themselves. Even the younger people are starting to push back. Homeschooling is unbelievably going up percentage-wise. And in fact, if I recall the numbers correctly, last year gun sales went up over 70%. And the vast majority of them, way over half, are young suburban women. Because they know as crime goes up, will they defund the police and all the rioting and all the pillaging and burning, they're putting their children at risk. Woe is the person that breaks into an apartment or a house where there's a young mother there with 2 or 3 kids, and she's got a Glock, and guess what? You threaten her kids or even come in the house or on the property, she will unload that clip into you before she'll ask any questions, because there's nothing more dangerous and ferocious and powerful as a mother protecting her children. And these white suburban women that voted for Biden are gone now. And here's the thing. What's going to happen? Look at these crowds. Now, granted, these were Trump rallies. See, these aren't crowds there from this year. But what I'm trying to make is there's tens of millions, way over 100 million people. I know Trump only got 75-odd million votes. But they've converted so many people over. There were so many people there in the middle that said, you know, Trump is such an ass that I couldn't vote for him, especially white suburban women, college educated. He's such an ass that I can't vote for him. Joe Biden seems harmless. Uncle Joe from Petticoat Junction, just a harmless doofus. Well, guess what? Not so harmless, is he? He's causing a lot of harm. When you're getting close to some metropolitan areas to $4 a gallon for gas when we were energy independent. People see this. It's biting in their wallets, even without the heavy COVID restrictions. People are starting to wake up. He closed down the entire country for a year unnecessarily. Take the people that are susceptible to the virus, put them in isolation, i.e., senior citizens, people with certain health conditions, diabetes, obese, the list is endless, COPD. Well, they didn't do that. They cooked a marshmallow with a flamethrower. What the one guy put it, you try to kill a mouse with a missile. It was way overkill, and it caused huge psychological and huge economic damage to this country. I read somewhere that 40% of young people, I think that's under 25, contemplated suicide in the last year. That's effing crazy. Look what you've done. And these people are waking up to it. They really and truly are. This is a crowd for Phoenix Trump rally. Granted, like I said, this is last year, but these people aren't going away. In fact, they're multiplying. And the Democrats see this. And the smart Democrats know what's coming. That's why they're trying to push so many crazy laws about election security and all the other things they're trying to do with Second Amendment, stack the Supreme Court, because they see their time is short. This is July. They have less than a year and a half before they're wiped off the face of the earth politically. And the tide is turning. I go up and down psychologically, whether I think it's too late. I just did a video, is it over? But I'm really encouraged in the last few days when I start seeing the protests. And, of course, the moron progressive Democrats are just going to keep doing back crap crazy stuff and piss off more people. And I said, like I hear, it says the tide is turning now. Those you say, well, Trump's not president anymore. Blah, 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 blah. That's the part that the progressives and the Democrats don't understand. This movement of people of tens of millions has absolutely nothing to do with Donald Trump. Nothing. These people have seen their towns, their cities, now thriving communities because of bad trade deals in the last 30, 40, 50 years. And all it does is get money to corporations. And the Republicans are guilty too. There's a lot of blame to go around. How's that go? Everybody's guilty, so nobody's to blame? Well, guess what? Trump is a phenomenon of what these people are pissed about. If it wouldn't have been Trump, it would have been somebody else. And they're not turning back. And their numbers grow. In the next 6-8 months, beginning of next year, they're going to grow exponentially. It's going to be a bigger wipeout than Ronald Reagan. I'm telling you. Now, granted, the deep blue states will always stay deep blue, so they'll never get the 48 state electoral vote like Ronald Reagan got. But you're going to see numbers switch dramatically. 2 districts along the Rio Grande in Texas and the southwest border of Texas in Mexico were like plus 10 Hillary Clinton in 2016. They went from plus 10 Hillary to plus 15 Trump in 4 years. That's a 25-point swing. That never happens, but it did. And they're not going back. Ever. This is a quote from Admiral Yamamoto. And he knows. He went to the University of Chicago to go to college. You cannot invade mainland United States. There would be a rifle behind each blade of grass. God, I wish people still spoke like that so eloquently, but they don't anymore. But he knows. He knows the Americans. That's the funny part. You go back to World War II, you go back to talk about today. Why do foreigners know the American psyche better than Americans do? It's always baffled me. And this is what he said. And this is a famous quote, of course, from Admiral Yamamoto, who, like I said, went to school in Chicago, and he was friends with many Americans and understood the American culture extremely well. Yeah, granted, this is 1940. No, we're still the same country, and we still think the same. A lot of Europeans, a lot of people in the world think that the Americans are just arrogant. Well, you know what? I take that as a compliment. We are. You know why we're arrogant? Because we have something to be arrogant about, unlike what the progressives think. People are trying to kill themselves to get here. When they stop doing that, I'll start worrying. But Admiral Yamamoto was correct. I fear all we have done is to awaken a sleeping giant and fill him with a terrible resolve. This is what's happening now. is taking a longer than I thought. I wish it was faster, but it's like turning an aircraft carrier around, like I said. It takes time. And once it turns, there's no stopping it. That's the one thing that I'll say that I appreciate from the progressives and the Democrats, which are basically both the same now since the progressives run their party, even though they only represent 1 out of 5 real Democrats. If they pulled the curtain away, and what Democrats really believe. And it's woken up millions of people that were on the fence. It's hardened the people on the right that have always known are more dug in now, and the numbers are growing. There is no way they can pull what they pulled last year in the election cycle, and we'll leave it at that because I can't go into detail because this is YouTube. But they're convinced now. The curtain's been pulled away, like I said. Like in The Wizard of Oz, don't pay attention to the man behind the curtain. Well, it's too late. You can't unsee what you've already seen. And even with social media 98% controlled by Democrats, almost all of cable news, the internet is being censored like never before, but yet it's slowly leaking out. It's slowly getting to the population. Like Yamamoto said, and the Democrats are starting to realize that now, that they have awakened a sleeping giant, and they're going to give him a terrible resolve. And when this turns, it's going to turn. And the Democrats and the progressives are finished. Until the next time, goodbye and good luck.